now I'm recording this meeting, so good stuff. So you can come back, and if you're like, oh, she said something, what was that about the presentation? You can just go back and listen to it later. So it's awesome. All right, so this is the slideshow, like I said. I'm just going to start from the beginning. In the bottom, though, you'll see that there's notes down here. You can, when you look at it yourself, there's little, basically just little tips, stuff like that, but it's all stuff that I'm going to tell you here anyways. So this is Stronger Together, Diversity in Action. So come on, sweetheart. There we go. Okay. Awesome. So the presentation, like I said, it's kind of fun. And we've rebranded. So if you remember last year, we had all this dark green stuff. Now we have light green and orange stuff. So it's fun. So there's your introduction slide, prompts you to introduce yourself, gives the students the idea, and then our, you know, happy man dancing on the expectation slide. And the first thing that we get to do is we start with a video. This video is the Coca-Cola video where the bugs steal that Coca-Cola bottle from the guy who's sleeping in the picnic or on his picnic blanket in the park. You guys have you both seen that commercial before, maybe?
I haven't. Trying to remember.
Yeah,
sure.
it's like a Super Bowl commercial from like 2 or 3 years ago, so it's a little bit old, but it is phenomenal. The videos are embedded, so when you click, you can see I'm just going to click here. It will just start to play by itself, and it might not because I'm sharing it via the thing right now. But the videos are embedded into the PowerPoints and are sent also to the teacher in advance, so they will be able to have that go for you. You will, again, when I'm not doing it through this application, it'll work. So,
okay.
All right.
So what's the takeaway point here?
The point of the video is that, so basically the way that it works is we have all the little bugs, and they have to steal this, or they want to steal this Coca-Cola bottle. But, so the first little bug is a ladybug, and then there's these, so then it signals to the bees, and the bees come and they push the bottle over, and then the grasshoppers roll it down the grass. The butterflies move the little guy's hand out of the way, and then basically every bug has a role in stealing the bottle, and each one of them has their own attributes, so they have their own, you know, thing that makes them good for whatever it is that they're doing. So the moral of it.
Yeah, sorry. Sort of like the team is made of diverse people, right? Like
exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, not one person could have done it by themselves. So just like in your workplace, I'm sure that you guys have teams where you work together, and somebody's like, I mean, even in just a company, you have people that are good at accounting, you have people that are good at HR, you have people that are good at managing people, people that are good at managing accounts, you know, different things or whatever it is that you've got going on. There's somebody that does something because they're specialized, and so it's because they're diverse that they're able to succeed. So the first lesson is called The World of Work. If you're scrolling through and wanting to look in the program guide, it is on page 10 that this starts. The student workbooks are on page 2 at this point. So the first page is just a table of contents, all that stuff. So the first thing you want to ask the students is, what does the acronym TEAM stand for? And this is the typical sports team acronym, and it's Together Everyone Achieves More, which is exactly what we saw in that video just a minute ago. So I'm going to ask the students, like, what does that mean? Or do you think that this was definitely true when you saw the video? And a lot of them are like, yeah, cool, right? They get really excited because you show them a video first thing in the morning. They're, I don't know what it is about videos, but it either like wakes them up and they get really excited. So it's good. All right. So facilitate a little discussion around that, and then move on to the next little section. And so it's ground rules for teamwork. These are listed in the student's workbook, and there's 10 of them, and there they all are. And you can have the students, you know, share which one they think is most important. That's what I usually do, is I get them to share. In the program guide, it just says review them. You can be a little bit creative and get them to like tell you which one you think is most important, or which one did the bugs do. So like pitch in to help when necessary. is the only really one that works, and support one another and recognize each other's contributions. But you can also say like who's in a team or who's does something that's team related right now. So anybody, of course, on a sports team, or if they're in band, or if they work together as a group in school, or if they're part of some volunteer group. I know a lot of youth these days, I find they volunteer a lot, or they'll do extra stuff in their school where they, you know, like Students for Caring and stuff like that. So they might be able to share some stuff there. And you might not get, you know, a response from every student, of course, because they'll still just be a little bit shy, but that's okay. So just basically go through that with them. And then there's a question in the student's book there. It says, what else helps us work well in teams? Add your own ideas to the list. Ask the students how they can tell if the team's not working well and how they can improve the way that their team works. All basic things to get the conversation going. So now that we've given them all these ideas and thoughts about working together as a team, we get to do the first activity or game of sorts. So it's called What's It For? So page 11 of the program guide, page 3 of the student's workbook. So the first thing that you want to do is introduce the activity. So the way that I suggest to introduce it is to take that black JA bag that we give you that's got all the books and all the stuff in it and ask them, what is this for? You can use anything else if you like your own purse or whatever, but I usually use the JA bag because it's a generic, simple thing. And say, well, what do we use this for? And they'll be like, oh, carrying stuff. Okay, what else could we use it for that isn't carrying stuff? So they could use it as a pillow, or they could change the shape of it and turn it into a pair of shorts, or maybe they could turn it into a blanket. Maybe they could re-sew it and make it parachute, or maybe they could take the strap off of it and make it make a dog leash out of it. So just get them to start thinking outside of the box on what to do with a bag that it wasn't originally intended for. So this is the activity where you will be able to bring something in if you wish. So next, you want to split them up into 6 groups. Some classes, as you know, come in groups already, like they just sit in groups as it is. Some of them sit in rows. Some of them sit in weird, strange configurations. But you want to put them into 6 groups at this point, or 5. It really depends on how big your class is. But the book suggests 6 groups on the top of page 12. So I usually just go with that. And then there's an option. You can use the items here, the pictures. So we've got the umbrella, the duck, all that stuff. Or you can bring items in. Now, my favorite items to bring are from the kitchen. My most favorite is a garlic press. And then I also have a pastry cutter that I usually bring. I also have a, glasses case for some glasses that I don't even own anymore, and some other just sort of weird knick-knacky stuff that does have a valuable purpose, but right now either I don't use it or it's just become part of my DIA kit. So bring in whatever you like. It doesn't have to be kitchen related. I just find that most of my tools in my house that aren't, hammers and stuff are in the kitchen. So there's that. Of course, you can bring in stuff like stuffed animals, or, maybe you've got like one of those really old little alarm clocks that we used to have. I don't know if you can still buy those anymore, but you might have some of that, whichever you like. So then what you want the groups to do is work together as a group using the rules from before and get them to come up with 10 uses for that item other than what it was originally intended for. Same thing, like if you gave them a clock, they can always take something apart. So on the clock, there's those hands. Well, maybe they can use the hands and reconfigure them so that they could be used as chopsticks if they need to eat or something like that. So they can come up with different ideas. And then ask the students, how did you work well together and why? That's in their book. There's a section there. But then we have different questions we can ask them too, which is our discussion section. So why are there so many different ideas? Of course, because they're working together as a group. How are the ideas shared upon or improved upon by sharing? And how can a team be more successful? So you're selling them on the concept of brainstorming and why it's important to learn how to brainstorm. So they can do that. All right, so the next activity in lesson 1 is called Job Journey. The goal of this is to transform them now from where they were working together as teams, learning how to brainstorm, okay, now how do people get jobs and what kind of jobs? And we're going to go into a little bit of a fairness and kind of accessibility thing here. So ask the students, how do you think most people get jobs? And they're going to say, well, they went on the newspaper, or they went on the internet and they saw a job posting, or the store had a posting up outside of their store, so I knew that they were hiring people. So the other things that you can say is like their cousin gave them a job at the family store, or they had a friend that needed somebody to work for them. So they can kind of go like, okay, there's a bunch of different ways that people can get jobs. So ask the students, what is your dream job? And this is a section where I've modified the activity a little bit. So what I do is, you'll see on page 13 of the program guide that it says to hand out a slip of paper to each student. And I do recommend doing this. And what I do is I ask the teacher in the classroom, I say, where's your scrap paper pile? Because especially at this time of year, they have tons of paper that's ready to go out to recycling. So you could take those and just write them on the back. So have each student write down their dream job on a piece of paper. Now, the book says to have the students just put the papers into a bag, and then you're going to select some out. I think that's way too boring and definitely not in the spirit of junior achievement. So we're going to play a game, and it's called Dodgeball. If you've come to a training here at the JA office, you've probably played it before. And so once you get the students to write down their dream job, when they're all done, tell them the rules. The first rule is that they can't throw their paper at anybody's head or in any way that's aggressive. The second rule is that they can send the papers back and forth as many times as they want. And the third rule is that when you get to the bottom of a countdown, so say if you start at 10 or 5 or whatever, that the students each have a piece of paper in their hands so that you know that all of the pieces of paper that were thrown out got picked up off of the floor. So after you play the game, so have them crumple up their paper, have some fun with it, after that, they're all going to be super excited about what job they have on their paper now. Some of them are going to think that this is the job that they're going to get, but no, that's not true. So what you're going to do is pick 3 or 4 or however many jobs you want to. So have the students share, like, what jobs do you guys have? And you'll find some that are totally ridiculous. Like they want to be, I don't know, there was one student that had something completely ridiculous in a classroom that I was in last week, and I was just like, please don't write that one down. But then they'll come up with some other stuff where like they want to be like a hockey player, or they want to be an artist, or maybe they want to be a photographer, or they want to work for NASA, or they want to be a dentist. They'll come up with stuff like that. So write down those jobs on the board, and then you can ask the students a few questions. So on page 14 of the book, of the program guide, you'll see there's questions. Could the job be done by either gender? Why or why not? Could a person with vision loss, hearing loss, or limited mobility do this job? Why or why not? And could a person of any age do this job? Why or why not? So age, of course, you want to remember young people and old people, either way, or, you know, middle-aged people. It doesn't really matter. So for each of the jobs that you selected, ask the students, well, do you think that somebody could have either gender? And the answer to that one is almost always, of course, yes. But then hearing loss, vision loss, you know, you kind of have to think like, okay, well, maybe if there was specialized technology, but maybe not, because these requirements of the job. So ask the students what they think, which is cool. So then the next thing that we get the students to do is on page 4 of their workbook is record their dream job on page 4 and circle the attributes. So there's a whole list there, things like adaptable, disciplined, kind, mathematical, upbeat, witty, understanding, all kinds of things like that in that list. So there's, I don't know, probably like 50 things there that they can choose between that they would need in order to do their job. So I've also just defined the word attributes, just sometimes they don't know exactly what that means, even though they are taking, you know, English in school. You never know. So, all right. Moving on. So after that activity is the end of lesson 1, but we go into the fairness section of of the lesson now. So it's fairness at work, and the next thing that we want to do is use those little colored dots. So we get to regroup them now. So they've got to do their one activity in the one group. Now they're going to regroup, and we're going to put them in new groups. So the best way to do it, on page 17 of the program guide, you'll see it says to have the students line up in order of their birth dates. So January 1st to December 31st. I usually time them just to see how fast they can do it. Average is about a minute for a class of 30. That they can get all lined up, and they have to work together because they have to team up and figure out, okay, well, whose birthday is when, and am I before or after this person, blah, 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 blah. And then once you get them all lined up, you're going to randomly divide them into 4 groups. Now, you'll notice in the book it says to divide them into 5. You're not. You're going to put them in 4. We had to modify this specific lesson just because of some of the content. So we just make it 4 groups. It also is beneficial because they have to learn how to work in 4 really big groups, and that's sometimes more difficult. Of course, working in a group of 2 or 3 or 4 is a lot easier than working in a group of like 6 or 7. So it's challenging for them, but it's a good challenge. So split them up into groups, red, green, yellow, and blue, and have them rearrange their desks. Then we're going to start the activity. So this activity is called Getting to Yes, and we're going to get the students to do some problem solving. So you want to ask them, how do you feel when something unfair happens to you? And then there's this cute little comic here. This grade is so unfair. She skipped right over E. I think it's adorable. So, of course, they're going to say, like, I'm sad, I don't like it, I was a little bit angry, anything like that. So that's good. That's what we're, that's what we're going to go and work through. So what we want to do with the students is teach them how to solve problems or resolve conflicts. So in the students' workbook, this scenario exists on page 8. And the idea is that you will take the students through the first scenario, so this one, as a whole class, just to give them the ideas and the steps on what to do and how to solve a scenario. After, you're going to assign them all their own scenarios. So to go through this one, of course, you just want to read it out to the students, or have a student volunteer. If you've got a lot of really strong readers, they'll let you know, and they'll ask you, like, can I read that? Or you can ask who wants to read this, and if they say no, then you can read it. Just depends on, how they feel. So basically, a student is trying to get a job at a pizza store, and the owner doesn't want to hire him because he's too busy and doesn't want to have somebody who's brand new and inexperienced. So how do we get to yes? So the steps to solve conflicts and get to yes. I just give these to the students, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because it is a clear way for them to understand it. Otherwise, this lesson kind of gets confused. So first, we want them to understand the conflict, then identify the points of view for each scenario, which we'll do, determine what each side needs, figure out how they could reach their agreement, so brainstorm some ways for people to get what they need, and decide on the consequences of not resolving the conflict. So what would happen if they didn't, of course. So identify the different sides. Of course, we have the pizza restaurant owner and the student. The student wants, the pizza wants. What does each of them need? So help, income, etc. You guys can see how this works, right? So next step, of course, like I said, step 4 is to brainstorm some ways that they could resolve their differences, reach an agreement. So there's some job shadowing ideas, references. Maybe the student could bring a pizza for the owner so we can show him his skills. And what happens if we don't resolve the conflict? The owner doesn't have help of an eager student, and the student doesn't get any work experience or income. So both of them are basically back to square one if they don't resolve the conflict or resolve the situation. So page 18 of the student's workbook, it'll instruct you to have the students or give each student a scenario. So read the scenario card that's been assigned to your group and follow the steps. So I'll show you guys all the other 4 scenarios in a second. But I just, while they're working on it, give them the points again. So it just sort of, it's a refresher for them, even though it was only like a minute ago. They'll be like, what are we doing? Now, the students are going to be working in page 11 of their workbook. That's really important because you'll see there's a bunch of questions on page 9 and 10 of their workbook. They will be working on page 11, and it says that up here on the slide too. So the ones that are keen will figure it out. Some of them will be like, I'm working on page 9 and I don't understand. It's like, of course not, because you weren't paying attention. So that's okay. All right, so for each scenario that you give them, there's this scenario. So store owner shouldn't have to serve students. Basically, there's a store owner. She's worried when too many students come into the store that she's going to get stolen from. How do they fix that or resolve that? A student needs to buy his lunch at the store, and that's the only place that he can get his lunch because everywhere else is too far away. They don't have a cafeteria in the school. You sometimes have to sell the situation to the students a little bit, just be like, yeah, but you don't have a cafeteria. They don't have another store that they can go to. They don't have the option to bring lunch. A lot of students are like, well, the student could just bring lunch. It's like, but maybe he can't. Maybe their parents are too busy, or maybe he's staying with relatives and they're not able to make him a lunch in the morning. Who knows? There's no way for him to get lunch. So sometimes you just have to make them do it. So scenario 3, girls should be allowed to play on boys hockey teams. My only recommendation is don't give this to a group of all boys or mostly boys. Yeah, it doesn't always. Sometimes they're good, but sometimes they're like, well, we don't want her to play on our team. So it's funny, but that's okay. Normally they're really good, and they actually get really excited about these activities. The next one is students are asked to contribute to a photography club budget. So students that want to join a photography club have to pay this $50 fee, but they can't afford it. I've seen teams come up with stuff like they could pay it like $5 a month or $10 a month, or they could, there's some other things that they could do. They could do a fundraiser, stuff like that, so that they can learn how to use how to become a photographer. And lesson 5, or scenario 5, is all students should be allowed to audition for a dance show featuring ethnic dancing. Now the thing is, it says audition there. There's a group that doesn't want a girl who isn't of the same ethnic background to dance with them. So, but the only thing is the dancer's a really good dancer, and she wants to learn a different dance from a different culture. So some solutions there, of course, she could practice with the dance group, and she can do some studies on the culture and heritage and learn, a little bit better. So there's always a solution. So after each group has gone through and answered all 4 questions on page 11 for their scenario, have them each share. So this is a point where you can actually use this PowerPoint, and so when, you can start and say, like, who's got scenario 4, and then they can, they can share what solutions they came up with. Same thing with scenario 5. What solutions did you guys come up with, so that the rest of the class understands the scenario. And then open it up to the rest of the class too. Ask them, what do you guys think? What else do you think that this group could do, or how else do you think that you could reach an agreement here? And sometimes they'll come up with other stuff, like even though they didn't work on it and the other group did, they might still be able to share on what other solutions there are. So, yeah.
So all of these scenarios are listed in student book, right? So you can allocate each group.
Yes, the scenarios aren't actually listed in the student's book. We have separate cards for them, but they'll be included in your work kit. Yeah, so there's 4 of them. There used to be 5. Like I said, we had to modify it. We had to take just one scenario out. It didn't follow along with our code of ethics, so we had to pull it out. So that's okay.
Okay.
It works. It goes well. So staying with the fairness theme, we're going to explore the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. So there's a quiz for the students on page 12 and 13 of their workbook. And they can do this quiz as a group. So you ask the students, how often do you guys get to do a quiz as a group? And they're going to be like, never. Okay, good. So you guys can work together and get this to, you guys should all be getting 100%, right? So this is curriculum that they learn in grade 7 as well as, again, in grade 9. Sometimes they also learn it in grade 6. So it just sort of depends on the school system that they're in, but they should know this or these questions. So give them about 5 or 10 minutes to complete the quiz as a group, and then have each team, so the answers are here. You may see on question 2 on the PDF book, you'll see there's a discrepancy between A and C. In my book and the ones that you guys have, it says that the answer is for question 2 is C. It's not, it's actually A. They just For some reason, when they reprinted the student books in the last 6 months, they changed that to be answer A instead of answer C. I'm not really sure why, but so when in doubt, the presentation is correct, or 51 years is right. So the year was 1918. And then for all of them, the answers will pop up here as you go through. So once you're finished, you want each group to add up their total mark, and this is where we get to have a little bit of fun. So if you're on page 20 of the program guide, there is a section where it instructs you to regrade the students' marks. So let's say that the red group got 50%, but you think that they worked really well together and they communicated really well and you heard them really thinking through each answer, but they still got only 50%. You can say, okay, well, you guys can get 70% for your effort. I'll give you guys an extra 20%. And then, let's see, the yellow group, they got 80%, but I think that it was only one person in the group. They didn't really work together. They just let one superstar smart kid in their group do the work. So you're going to chop their mark down to 50%, stuff like that. So I suggest also having one group, like the blue group or the green group or whichever, to retake the quiz. And so they'll be like, retake the quiz? Oh, man, I don't want to have to do it again. It's like, okay, but didn't I just give you guys all the answers? They'll be like, yeah. And then I always ask them, did you write the answers down? If they say yes, then they got 100%. If they say no, you can ask them, like, okay, well, what mark do you guys think you'll get? How many of the answers do you think you're right? They'll be like, oh, I don't know, all of them. So use your judgment. Do whatever you guys want. So basically, what you get to do is regrade the groups on however you feel, or you can follow in the book and it says based on their colored dot. So ask the students, how does it feel to have your mark regraded? They're going to be like, that was so mean. That's unfair. That's against the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And of course it is. So was it a fair way to be graded? Of course it's not. Why is it important to be fair to one another? This is a really important question. Of course, this is the kicker here. It's important to be fair to one another because if you're not fair to one another, for example, the one group that you chopped their mark in half, even though, even though they earned that mark, they're not going to try as hard next time because they don't know if you're going to get full marks or not for what they did. So same thing in life and in work and in school. It's important that we're fair because then people will be able to excel. Is the regrading of marks in this manner acceptable? Of course not. Their teacher is not allowed to regrade them like this either. And that's it. So those 5 questions, just ask them that. They'll, it's up to you. Sometimes I feel really bad and I have to put their marks back, but you can just leave them if you want. It's really up to you. So, all right. So question 21, there's a bunch of personal story information and stuff there. There's one section there where it talks about talking about support groups in your workplace for members of the GLBT community. Maybe I'm going to absolutely say that you can't talk about that in the classroom, but you can talk about stuff like how you'll be able to receive leave time for when somebody's sick, or when I was working at a different organization, we were able to take days where we could move. So if we bought a new house or were moving, then we could take a day off of work without using a vacation or a personal day or a flex day and move. So just sort of stuff like that. On the bottom of page 21, there's an extended activity, Laws of Equality. We're not going to be doing that one. We don't have time for it, and honestly, it's not really well written out. It basically just tells them to go to a website, so we can skip through that stuff. And page 22, we get into the next activity, which is called Accessibility. And so this is still lesson 2, but it's core activity 3 of lesson 2. There's also a note there, you'll see it says lunch. Of course, we are not going to be going for lunch at that time. You'll likely have your school's nutrition break at that time, but not lunch. It's just that this program was originally designed to be delivered over a full day instead of just a morning like we do here in Calgary. So, of course, you want to ask the class, what are your 5 senses? And sight, hearing, touch, taste, and smell. And then ask the students, do you guys know anybody who's without one of these senses? Personally, I actually have a friend who doesn't smell. So, there's a risk there to him. Say if there was a smoke or fire or something, he wouldn't be able to smell it. So just, bring it to light. Ask them, like, does anybody know somebody who can't see, or know of somebody who can't see, or who can't hear, maybe somebody who's deaf. The other two, or the other three, of course, are a little less, common to be without, but it happens. And then ask the students who's seen Braille or knows what Braille is. And the beeping sound at intersections, why is that? And the streets with curb cuts, or like those slopes down to the curb. Of course, that's for people in wheelchairs. So in the student's workbook on page 22, you'll see a section there under class activity. It says, ask the students, what are your 5 senses? And of course, we've done that. Down a little bit further, it says, ask the students to tightly close their eyes, no talking, time them for 1 minute, and then have them open their eyes. We're going to change that. We are going to play them the audio clip from the commercial that is promoting described video, or promoting awareness of described video. So do both of you know what described video is?
No.
No? Okay. So there's a commercial on TV that I'm not sure if maybe it's on now. I don't actually watch TV very much, but it's a lady, and she comes into a kitchen, and she puts her keys down on the counter, and she yells, hello, is anybody home? And then she gets scared by a mouse on the counter, and she drops her groceries. Then it plays again, except now it's dark in the kitchen. And so she comes into the kitchen, she drops her keys on the counter, she yells, hello, is anybody home? She gets scared by a child in a mask, and then she drops her groceries. And then the commercial says, did you see the difference? And most people are like, well, you told us what the differences were, obviously, And so people who are sighted don't get it. But when you're not sighted, or when you're blind, it's how people without vision experience TV. So it's actually described to them. So I have the audio clip for that commercial, where you can click just down in the center at the bottom there. So you can click here to listen to the audio first. Same thing like before, click up in the black box, and you can watch the actual video itself too, so that the students can understand. And half of them will say, I don't understand it. And then half of them afterwards will go, oh, I get it. And then there'll still be some that still don't get it, but do your best. It's okay. Some of them, I don't know. It seems to be a difficult concept for sighted people to sort of understand or realize, but it does help them. So what you want to do is have them close their eyes while you listen to the audio clip. And you might want to play it twice even. I've done that before. So awesome. So basically they learn, that's a good thing that the Canadian broadcasters do for people who are not sighted. So it's an accessibility thing. All right. Now this is the fun section that the students get to have a little bit of a break. They get to, be a little bit goofy, so they can write their name in Braille. I also, if they've already done it, sometimes you'll find like they finish the quiz early and they'll jump ahead and they get all excited. So you can tell them that they have to write another word. Sometimes there's words up in the classroom. Be creative, get them to write something else out in Braille. You can also yourself, I don't suggest do this if the classroom is a chalkboard because it takes forever, but if you have a whiteboard in the classroom, you can write your name or write another word on the board and then have them decipher it and tell you what it says. So what does this say, kind of thing. Yeah. And then same thing, sign language, they can sign the words hello and goodbye. You can also have them sign the word done once they're finished. Once they've done that, they can sign the word done. And you'll find that they actually start to get all in a rhythm, signing the word done. So they'll be like D-O-N-E. I'm doing that right now with my hands. But anyways, you'll see them doing it. And then, so once the whole class is able to do that, then you can sort of move on. So it's a good way to keep them engaged and give them a little bit of a challenge. The book encourages them to stay silent while they're doing this, but it's all good if they don't. So that takes us through page 23 and onto page 24 of the program guide, and it takes us over to page 16 of the student's workbook. So the next activity is called mobility. This is another and the last thing that these students will be doing in their current groups. So we'll have them discuss within their group devices or actions people can do when they're in a wheelchair. So they're in a wheelchair. How do they go through stairs in a building or curb or car, stuff like that. So, of course, these are the answers. They're also in your book. And then if you find that you're ahead of time, which you'll know on your agenda, there's the accessibility challenge. And this one doesn't take very long. So if you feel like you just need a little bit of time, go ahead and you can do this extended activity. but the students will be able to work on page 16 and 17 of their workbook and figure out how a person with vision loss, hearing loss, limited mobility would be able to access things like a website or an intersection, ACM, movie theater, etc. So you can assign one of the challenges to each group if you feel like you have time for it. If you don't, that's okay. The other thing with the mobility that I always forget to mention is on page 16 of the student's workbook, it says right there, how would a person with a vision impairment be able to access things like stairs outside of a building, hearing loss, and restricted mobility. Of course, we did the restricted mobility, but you can also get them to think about it if somebody was blind, if you want to take it just that one step further for this one. Okay?
Yeah.
So this is the end of all of the accessibility stuff. Yay. Now we can move into lesson 3.
Okay.
Any questions so far?
Nope, good.
Nope. All good? All right, so lesson 3 is called Support at Work. And this is the lesson where we get to talk to students about having a mentor, having somebody that will support them throughout their career search, throughout their, whether it's through their education, stuff like that. So, of course, they want things like advice, help, tips, support, guidance, and assistance. It might be a teacher, it might be their older sibling, it might be their neighbor or a family friend of theirs. It just sort of depends. So you want to ask the students who knows what a mentor is and what is a protege. So who knows what that means. So that's on page 27 of the program guide. And once you've gotten to that point, then they can do the activity on page 18 of their workbook. And that's the matching the mentor with their protege. So we have a bunch of movie characters. There's all the movies there, and there's all your answers. So have the students, work through this. This is another one of those ones where they might get a little goofy or giggle a little bit because they'll be like, oh my gosh, I haven't seen The Lion King in forever. Or if ever, actually, at this point I'm finding that a lot of them haven't, and I feel really old. But some of the movies are newer, some of them are really old, and usually you'll find a gray or a common ground with them at some point. So the next section of this is to basically discuss with the students what makes a good mentor. So what makes these characters good mentors. So for example, I'm just going to use The Lion King because I think that we have common ground there potentially, right? You guys have both seen it?
Yeah.
So Mufasa, of course, mentors Simba as his father. So sometimes it can be a father-son relationship, and shows him, the way of the lions, and teaches him about the circle of life, etc. And then even after Mufasa is gone, Simba still looks up to him and still sort of remembers him now that he's passed away. He remembers the teachings and he remembers it. So it's it's something that was long-lasting with him. So that's why Mufasa was good to Simba. Same thing Geppetto and Pinocchio. They supported each other. Geppetto supported Pinocchio throughout his entire life, of course. So you can have the conversation with the students. You can have them share with you. I mean, of course, I came up with all the Mufasa and Simba stuff. You can have the students come up with that too. So ask them, why do you think, why did you think that Dumbledore was good to Harry Potter, kind of thing. So if you're finding that there's not a lot of common ground, they don't know these movies or whatever, you can also ask them about their own personal mentors. So maybe their teacher, maybe it's their coach, maybe it's their brother, sister, friend, like I said. You never know. And then on page 28 of the book there, you'll see the answer key for this. And then basically discussions. If you move over to page 29 of the workbook, so scrolling down a little bit through there, it brings you to core activity 2, which is the old wrench. This is a story that the students will be able to read. Now, it's up to you. You can have the class read it all out loud as a group. You can have them read it silently. You can read it to them. It's up to you. Sort of gauge the class and how they're doing. If you find that you're running out of time, this is an activity that you can skip if you need to. Okay? So basically, they're going to read through the story, and then there's these 3 questions that they have to answer. And so I find that if I get them to read it by themselves, they'll, sometimes half of them will read it, half of them won't. And you'll ask them, what does Ryan gain from Mr. Grabowski, or what does he gain from recognizing Mr. Grabowski's role in his life? And they'll be like, well, Mr. Grabowski gave him a wrench. And it's like, okay, great. So you didn't read the story. So it's really funny. You can kind of test them that way. Of course, basically the story is that there's a guy, he doesn't really take a lot of vacation time from work, and his mother calls him and says that his childhood mentor had passed away. And so Ryan says, okay, I'll be there. And so he goes to the funeral or whatever, and then he realizes all the importance that Mr. Grabowski shared in him. So there was a package that came to him a few days later, and it was the old wrench that this Mr. Grabowski guy always carried in his back pocket. So basically the symbolism of the wrench was to remember to spend that time with your family. It sort of comes in a weird way. If you read the story, you'll understand it. But he books time off of work for like the first time in forever. So he learns that he needs to spend time with his family, building things with his daughters. So it says at the very end, the old wrench came in very handy, or it was really handy. So I don't know if that's good English or not, but it's there. So there we go. All right. So moving on past that, you'll see if you're looking at the student workbook, or when you look at the student workbook, page 21, there's a whole list, what makes a good mentor. So it's basically a wrap-up of this lesson. These are the things that makes good mentors. And you can just tell the students, you can refer to this list when you are trying to determine if somebody's a good mentor for you, or if this person is in fact a mentor, if they're just a friend, etc. So they can just take that, because they get to keep their books, of course. So they can just take that. All right, and then into lesson 4, and I'm doing this in record time. Yay. All right. So lesson 4 is really only one thing, and it's a game. As you guys know, in all of our JA programs, or whichever one that you've done previous, we have a game at the end. So this one is called the Couscous game. Now, it's open to interpretation, however you feel like you want to make this game work or make it go. I will give you, I'll tell you what the program guide suggests. I'll tell you what I suggest, and then I'll tell you some other things that I know have worked in the past. We are planning to make this into like a Jeopardy or some kind of, more structured game than what it is, but right now it's more of like a quiz, and whoever gets the answer right gets a point kind of thing. So before you get started with the game, you want to ask the students who's eaten food from another country. And I had a student in a class a couple weeks ago, and he was like, I've actually eaten couscous before. I'm like, that's really exciting. Cool. So of course, one of the question is, which country or region does couscous come from? And they may or may not actually know. We'll see. But anyways, ask them, who's eaten food from another country? What was it? Where was it from? So what country did it come from? And did you have to go to that country to eat it? Or did you eat it here in Canada? So does that tell us that Canada is a diverse country? Of course, yes, it does. So it basically introduces the idea. So page 31 of the program guide has these instructions, but they're also here. So you want to have them split up. This is where I said that they're going to make 5 new teams. Now you can number them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and have them make teams, or figure out how many students are in the class. If you have 30, of course, if you're going to have 5 teams, then you're going to have, however many per. So 5 teams of 6. For example. So if that's what you want to do, go for it. If not, if you want to number them off, or you can even have the teacher regroup them, up to you. Just make them into 5 teams. Have each team pick a name. Sometimes it can take a really long time to do this, so try to, put them on a time limit, like, hey, you guys have to have your name picked within this amount of time, and usually it's a big scramble, and somebody's in the end not really happy with whatever the team name is, but just make it go. So there's 30 questions total. The questions are actually in the student's workbook, pages 22 and 23. There are 30 questions. And each team will send, there's 6 rounds that you'll play. So the way that it's set up on the PowerPoint is each slide is 1 round. So it'll say at the top, you'll see in a minute, it says round 1, and it'll have 5 questions. So for each round, so each 5 questions, the representative will send a different team up, And then representatives can ask their team for help if needed. So the book says that they can actually spend 5 minutes to brainstorm and record their answers. You can do this if you like to. If you don't feel like you have time to, skip it. I usually skip it. I just like them to figure it out off the fly or see how they can work together. So the way that the book describes it is to choose them at random to answer. I particularly am not a fan of that just because there's no fairness there, so it kind of bothers me, but that's okay. So anyways, if the team that answers the question doesn't know the answer, so if they give you the wrong answer, then anybody else can try to answer, and the person who's given a correct answer is awarded a point for their team. So the team with the most points wins. Now, I'll tell you what I do. I have a little squishy stress ball that I bring into the class with me every time. And I've also done this program like 8 times this year because it's new this year. I've had to learn it really well. I know it pretty good now. But so I bring in a little ball, and I have each representative come up, and usually there's a table or a desk in the class that they can all stand around. And then, so I'll get them to all stand up around the desk and I'll ask the question. And so once I'm finished, then whoever gets that ball first gets to answer the question. So, but they can't start going for the ball until I'm finished asking them the question. Kind of Family Feud style of sorts. So if whoever gets that ball gets the answer wrong, I send all 5 teams back to their all 5 people, sorry, back to their teams, and I give them 5 seconds. I'm like, you guys have 5 seconds to talk it out. So then I count down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. When they come back, I get them to line up all again, put the ball back, and then I ask the question one more time. If whoever gets that ball gets that question wrong, nobody gets the points for it. We move on. I give them the answer. And then we get a new representative for each round. So this is the way that it works, or looks, sorry. So that's what I suggest. The other thing that you can do with this is to have them split into only 2 teams. So have like split the class in half, split them up, and then for each question have them do the same kind of similar thing, either with the ball, or you can have it where they raise their hands or where they tap the desk. Either way, just make sure that you can keep track of who was first. So the questions, when you get to the end of the question, whoever gets the ball first, they can, if they get the question wrong, because there's only 2 people up there, the other person can then try to answer. If they get the question wrong as well, then everybody can go, then they go back to their teams, talk it out 5 seconds, come back, and then try it again. So there's an option for them to be able to steal.
Okay, so in the first option, like the first way of doing, how do you decide who's going to answer? It's random, right?
It's random, yeah, and it just, like in the book here, I'm just going to have a quick look because I haven't actually read it for a long time because I don't recommend it. But it says that the representatives will be asked a question in turn. So like you can start with the first team, ask them the question. If they get it wrong, then anybody else can try to answer. If they all get it wrong, then, yeah. We have played it in a way where instead of having them, we've had them actually just shout out the answer, like all 5 of them all at once. And I've played it where if they all say the right thing, so if they all say Greece for the souvlaki question, then they all get a point for their team. So you can do that too. That's, I guess, the third option. Yeah, a little bunch of ways.
And you want to ask all the questions or just few of them?
The goal is to get through all of the questions.
Okay.
You probably won't. You'll probably run out of time. Most times I get to, I'm just going to go to, I usually get to this round, round 5. And it's really good because with this round, the last question is really difficult. Nobody ever gets this question 25 right. So that one I find is really good. If you make it to round 6, then of course we've got the rest of these. Question 28, you'll notice that I wrote scientifically in front of it. In the student's workbook, it doesn't say that, but I had to write that because every once in a while, when we're in a Catholic school, they go, well, are you sure? So if you tell them based on science, they're fine. They don't really, yeah. It's basically just where the oldest human remains have been found. But since this was made in 2013, which was last year, We found I think it's like footprints or fossils in Iceland. So it really could be anywhere. You know what, if they said Iceland, I would accept it, given that, you know, yeah. So that takes you guys till the end. There is a wrap-up here that you can do if you actually get to the end. This is where we get to use those little cue cards that you'll see in your workbook, and on the cue card it says what is the best thing about working together with a diverse group of people, and they can write on there, you know, what they think the best thing is, and then they'll likely hand them all back to you. You can pick them all up, and then you can actually see, and it's a good way to get feedback and see how much they learned in the day, if you want. Or you can, instead of doing it on the cue card, you can just rapid fire, go through the class and ask each one of them to answer. You might not have time, and if you don't, that's okay. It's just your wrap up. So that's the end of the program. So do you guys have any questions?
Yeah, so do you know when we start and when we finish?
Yes, I do. I'm just going to jump back over here into the here so you guys can look at that for a second. Can you refresh my memory what school you guys are going to, or each of you is going to? Do you know, or what day?
I'm going to Ascension of Our Lord on March 19th.
Wednesday. Okay.
And that's my birthday, yay!
Oh yes, right. Happy early birthday. Actually, I will be at that school for sure.
Oh,
so
will you? Oh, nice.
I'll make sure to bring like a birthday card or a cake or something.
Oh, you don't have to, but it would be nice.
Oh, okay. You don't have to, but it'd be nice. Okay. Give me 1 second. I'm just going to double check on the agenda for that day. Kim and I, well, actually for the Ascension of Our Lord, that's actually my school, so I will be sending it out to you. The agenda isn't done yet because, well, I've been a little bit busy, but I do have the registration confirmation form. Oh, come on, you silly thing. It's being stupid. I'm just going to jump on the internet really quick. A lot of the time, so what will happen is we go into the school a half hour before their first bell starts.
Okay.
That gives us time to sit down, relax, figure out, you know, the materials and stuff like that. So a lot of schools post their bell schedule on their website, which is really handy for me. Some schools don't get back to me super fast, so let's see if I can find that here. Bell schedules. Perfect. Alrighty, so okay, that's a later school. That's good. So the school start time for Ascension of Our Lord on Wednesday is 9 o'clock. So we'll be arriving at the school at 8:30. And then lunch break is at 12:47. So we'll have lunch, or no, 12:07. Sorry, I lied. So at about 10 after 12, then we'll get to break for lunch, or we'll take lunch, and then I'll have lunch come in and stuff for you. They do have a recess or nutrition break at 10:25.
So everything, yeah. The whole presentation has to be done by lunchtime then?
Yeah. And you might, like I said, you'll know based on your agenda what lesson you should be on at what time. So lesson 2 takes the longest. Of course, you can tell because it took me the longest to tell you guys about lesson 2, which was the whole section about accessibility and stuff. So that one will likely be occurring during the nutrition break and then over. And then period 4, you should be able to spend that time. So it's about 11:20 or so till noon. You can spend that time playing the couscous game. If you have to take time away from anything, it'll be the lesson 4 that you can take it away from. And you can also skip that lesson 3 story if you want to. So I'll leave it up to you on how it goes in the classroom. You will likely have to skip the story just based on the fact that you're only going to have about 3 hours in the class. But that's average for this program. I noticed that that's usually the best way to go about it. Now, Rajan, are you going to the school on Wednesday as well, or are you going to a school on, okay, good. All right. Is anybody going to the school on Friday?
Pardon me? What was that?
Are you guys going to a school on Friday at all? We have another one next week, too.
No, mine is just on Wednesday.
Okay, perfect. All right, good. Well, that means that I don't have to go looking for more information. Yeah. Awesome. All right.
Both of us are going to same school?
Yeah, you guys actually be at the same school on the same day at the same time. It'll be Julia's birthday, so don't forget.
Yeah. And would we know who we're working with when we get to the school, or will we get an email, or how does that work?
Yeah, I'll be sending you guys out as soon as I get somebody to pair up with you. Now, this time of year seems to be really difficult for us to source volunteers. I've got a couple calls out to a bunch of different people. So I'm going to do my best to have everybody partnered up, especially because it's your first time doing this program. But how would you guys feel if it just never worked out and I had to send you guys into the classroom by yourselves? Would you be okay, or would you absolutely not want to do that?
I'm okay.
I'm okay with it. I guess we would just have to modify it based on not having help and what you need to do, you know, within the time.
Yeah, and the teacher that you will get in the classroom, I find, especially when I've done it alone, is they're really helpful and they're usually quite engaged. This program is also quite easy to do on your own. I find that like dollars with cents is the hardest for me to do, and on my own is the worst. But I can do this one. Like, I mean, obviously, I've been in the classroom a lot before, but on experience, the first time that I had to do this program alone was the second time that I ever did this program. It was actually quite easy and quite fun. So I will try to get you guys partners, though. I'll do my best.
The office closes at what time, Rebecca? I'm thinking I may just, I just want to be prepared just in case I have to do it on my own, so I would love to have the material ahead of time.
Have the material. Yeah, for sure. Our office tonight is actually going to be open for a while because we have some stuff going on, but tomorrow, of course, we'll close. Usually our receptionist leaves at 4, and then she's usually here. Usually it's like 8 to 4 that we're here, so.
That's a Monday to Friday type thing, right?
Yeah, 8 to 4, Monday to Friday. But like I said, I can send a courier out. I can send it out to you tomorrow.
You know, that would be
and
great.
Get it to you.
Yeah. My schedule. I'm normally at work until 5 tonight. I'm working late, so I'm here until 8 o'clock tonight. So.
Okay.
So if you send it at the branch, I don't know if you've got my address for the branch or not.
We can connect via email, and I'll send it.
Okay.
And I'll get your email. I'll get the address, and I'll send it out. It'll just be an inner city courier, so I'll send it out tomorrow morning, and then it'll get to you tomorrow. Yeah.
Awesome.
Awesome. Rajan, would you like the same? Would you like me to send the book out to you?
No, I'm good. It's the same book, right, that you sent me?
Yeah, it's the PDF book. Yeah. Okay.
So,
all right.
On the day, somebody will be there with the material, right?
Yeah, I'll be there. I'll have everything.
You'll be there. Okay.
Yeah, and I might have to teach. We'll see, but I'll do my best not to. So, awesome.
All right. Well, we'll look forward to it.
Yeah, me too. And of course, that said, if you guys have friends or family that you maybe want to loop in and bring them along with you, absolutely go for it. They could be your partner if you have somebody in mind. That's okay too.
Okay.
So if you have coworkers, somebody walking by on the street, maybe not that far, but you know.
Anybody. Hey, you're it.
Yeah, hey, you. How do you feel about teaching students to be fair to one another? Yeah.
Nice.
Good stuff. Alrighty.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you
You're welcome.
And enjoy the rest of your day.
You too.
All right, take care.
Great. Bye, ladies.
Bye.
Bye.